Record on. Okay, so if we start our class, um, in the last session, we have been, you know, trying to discuss the six perfection, the six parameters, which is known as the Parchintuk in Tibetan language, right? So the six parameters are the generosity, ethical discipline, patience, enthusiastic effort, concentration, and wisdom, right? So if you say this in Tibetan language, generosity is the chimba, um, and ethical discipline is the tsultim, patience is the zotpa, enthusiastic effort is the stondus, concentration is samstan, and wisdom is shilsap, right? So we are supposed to, prefix the terms with the perfection, right? Perfection, the parameter, right? The parameters. We are supposed to add this, in the initially. So we are supposed to say the perfection of generosity, the perfection of ethical discipline, the perfection of passions, the perfection of enthusiastic effort, the perfection of concentration, and the perfection of wisdom. Right, because these are the perfected ways. These are the perfect method or which actually leads towards the attainment of the enlightenment, right? So why these are called perfection? Because in generosity, there is the right kind of generosity, and there could be a a generous way of giving in a wrong way, also with the wrong motivation, or with the wrong basic wrong basis, just like Robin Hood, who robs from others and then give it to other people, right? Or someone who steals and then just to show that, oh, this guy is someone who actually helps the people, like right. So that is a bit a wrong way of practicing generosity, right? So the right kind of generosity is known as the parameters, right? The parameter, the perfection, right? The perfect way, the perfect method, right? So so we have discussed the etymological, meaning of the paramita, why it is called paramita, right? Well, a paramita in Tibetan language is called parchin, right? Parchin, right? So if we again just brief it again, then the paramita is made up of two words, right? Para and mitas, right? So para is the other shore or the other side, right? So mitas is gone, the literal meaning of para and mita, itas, right? So in Tibetan language is par chin. Par is the far reaching, the far away, or the if you go perfectly go with the Sanskrit word para, then is the other shore, right? So the English translation for para is the other shore or the other side, right? Par chin. Par in Tibetan language is par means the far away, So far away, right? So par chinpa means to go, right? Parchin itas, or well, which is gone, right? Gone to the other shore of the ocean, or gone to the other shore of the river, right? So what does it actually imply, right? What is the implication of this literal meaning? Is in terms of the sixth perfection, is we can summarize, we can generally say that following the perfection of the six parameters, right? Following the six perfections, one goes on the other side, one goes too far away from the samsaric world, right? One goes so far away from the sufferings of the samsaric world, right? One goes far away from the shores of the samsaric cyclic existence to the other side of the liberation, that is nirvana, right? That is the attainment of the perfect enlightenment, right? So going to the other shore here implies to the attainment of the perfect enlightenment, right? So the other side is the other side of or the samsaric world, the structure of the cyclic existence, right? So by following the perfections of generosity, ethical disciplines, passions, enthusiastic effort, concentration, and especially the wisdom, one gets rid of the causes and conditions of the samsaric existence, and then leads, and then it one goes beyond the samsaric structure of the existence and the contingencies of the samsaric world, right? So that here the other show refers to the state of nirvana, to the state of liberation, and to the state of perfect enlightenment, right? So third chin, right? So um, so this were the these were the interpretation. There are different interpretations we have discussed in the last session, so you can just follow that, right? um, so and then we have discussed a few other topics also, and then we had come on the topic of the perfection of generosity, right? And then we also have discussed this one, the perfection of generosity, which is a willingness. All the one has to keep in mind that all the, six perfections are state of mind. The attitude of mind, the habit of mind. The way of thinking. The perfections are perfecting our mind. The training of our mind. The training of our mind on the right path, right? So the right path are the perfections of generosity, and the other, following, six perfections, right? So if you take generosity, right? So generosity, the meaning of generosity, generosity refers the perfection of generosity, right? It refers to a certain state of mind or certain attitude of mind, certain a way of mind, right? Which is willingness in nature to give away whatever is needed by others, right? So it is a willing nature, right? So if it is not, if it is not a willing nature, then we have seen that 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 poor man, a poor man, who has nothing to give, he or she, that poor individual, cannot follow the perfection of generosity, right? Since it's a willingness, it's a way of life, it's a way of thinking, it's a state of mind. Even a poor man who has nothing to give away can still practice the generosity, right? Mentally he can visualize, right? He can imagine, right? He can make his train his mind habituated in the willingness of giving, right? So we also have given the example of the Kadampa Geshe, who used to who used to practice generosity by giving one object, from giving an object from his right hand to his left hand, even just to sort of to avoid the subtle the subtlest form of clingy mind, right? The attachment, the subtle form of attachment, in order to abandon that, even we have, it says that we have this subtlest attachment towards our objects, towards our belongings, we have this clinging, we hesitate to even give it from our right hand into our left hand, right? So that is the subtlest form of our clingy nature of our mind, right? Which we need to avoid, right? So here, while understanding the six perfections, we are supposed to know the nature of the six perfections. We are supposed to know the methods of how to follow the six perfections, right? And then we are supposed to understand the discussions in terms of what should be done, you know done while practicing the six perfections, right? So uh, while trying to understand this, uh, we also need to keep in mind that while practicing, while practicing the six perfections, we are supposed to abandon, we are supposed to eliminate, we are supposed to avoid their opposites also, right? Their opponent, state of mind, right? For example, while practicing the perfection of generosity, that is Jinbe Parota Chinba, right? While we are supposed to understand the miserliness of our mind. We are supposed to avoid that, right? So, but the greedy nature of our mind, right? The attachment of our mind, right? So we are supposed to. The opposite of generosity is miserliness, the greedy, right? So. While practicing the six perfections, we are supposed to avoid the opposite of the six perfections, right? All of the six perfections has its opposite, which is supposed to be avoided, right? In terms of generosity, it is the miserliness of our mind, or the greedy nature of our mind. In terms of the perfection of ethical discipline, is the bad conduct, right? And in terms of the perfection of passions, we have anger, you know, the hatred, which we have in our mind, which is very spontaneous, right? And then this spontaneity, the anger, it comes very easily, when someone tries to, do something bad or bring any kind of harm to us. We tend to, immediately get angry with a particular person, right? So by stopping our mind, by training our mind, by practicing patience, we're supposed to subdue anger, right? The state of hatred of our mind, resentment. Because of anger, there's hatred, there's resentment, right? So we are supposed to subdue that. We are supposed to control that. We are supposed to train our mind to be passionate, right? And then in terms of the practice of the enthusiastic effort, which is Chimbe Sondus, Giparoldo Chimba, right? We are supposed to avoid the laziness. Right. So we are very lazy. I'm very lazy in terms of that, right? So I'm supposed to be very mindful in this term, you know, so the lethargic state of our mind, but being lethargic is really bad. We are being lethargic. Just sit down and become a couch potato and do nothing, right? Lethargic in terms of our mental state, lethargic in terms of our body, our bodily mind, lethargic in terms of our verbal state also. Verbally we are lethargic, lethargic in the sense, when we are supposed to say something to someone in a very polite manner, we are very lethargic to use the right words. Oh, in Ladakh language we say, donazat, please have it, right? We are very lethargic to use the word please, even please, we are very lethargic to say even please do it, please eat it, please have it, right? We just say, oh, eat, have, do. That's very lethargic in terms of our verbal conduct, right? So in terms of our bodily conduct, or physical conduct, verbal conduct, mental state of mind, we are very lethargic in terms of that, right? So lethargy, laziness, um, postponing whatever we do, or not doing anything, not doing we are supposed to do, right at the moment, we postpone it, right? So there's another word I'm not recollecting, and another word. There's a very beautiful word for postponing our you know things, postponing things to tomorrow and later. There's another word which I'm not able to recollect right now, but okay, let's keep it for laziness only, and lethargic state of our mind. So that is the opposite of enthusiastic effort. And then we have the unsettled, straight wandering mind, right? Unfocused mind, which is the opposite of the perfection of the concentration, right? Samtangi Parotachinba, right? The wandering state of our mind, right? Which is completely unsettled, which is completely straight, which wanders from one place to another, which wanders from one thought to another thought, right? Our body is here, physically we are here, but mentally we are somewhere else. We could be in America, we could be in, but we could be in Ladakh, we could be in, Delhi, we could be in, South India or anywhere, we could be even in the space, right? So our mind is completely wandering around, that is also not focusing on one state, right? So the wandering nature of our mind, the unsettled nature of our mind, right? So samstan, the concentration, the perfection of concentration, right? And the opposite of which is the unsettled mind, right? The unfocused, pinpointed mind, right? So the straight mind, it is supposed to be eliminated. It's supposed to be, bring into control, right? Uh, Through mindfulness, right? So through meditation, and then we have the perfection of the wisdom, right? Which is Shirapke Parolachimba, right? So the opposite of this is the ignorant mind, right? Ignorance, right? Which is the root, the root cause of all kinds of problems, is the ignorance, right? So so in order to eliminate all the other state of mind, restlessness, bad conduct, anger, laziness, unsettled mind, we're supposed to sort of generate we're supposed to develop, cultivate the perfection of wisdom, Shirapki Paralachimba, right? So the root will, if we want to get rid of anything, we are supposed to get it, we are supposed to, eliminate it from the root, right? So the elimination of, ignorance becomes really indispensable, really necessary, right? So it becomes necessary in terms of, in terms of walking on the path of dharma, right? In terms of attending liberation, in terms of attending perfect enlightenment, right? So she's up. And the second thing is, these are all interrelated, right? So, Chimba, Sultan, Zopa, Sunbu, Samstan, Shistap, right? Generosity, ethical discipline, passions, enthusiastic effort, concentration, and Shistap. These are all, related with each other, right? If there is no wisdom, there cannot be, there cannot be, one will not or be willing to practice concentration, right? If there is no enthusiastic, joyful efforts, right, then there will the one and the individual person will not try to practice concentration and develop wisdom, right? And if one doesn't have the passions, right, one will not be able to pinpoint one's mind, right? One will not be able to develop the wisdom, right? So so these are all again interconnected. These are all practice. This all has to be practiced, with each other. For the ultimate ethical discipline, it becomes it becomes the foundation of all the virtues, all the practices. As Buddha says, Buddha actually compares the practice of the ethical discipline as the arts, which becomes the basis of everything, right? Every living and non-living, but everything, mountains and trees and everything, it is based on the arts, right? So the sultan or the ethical discipline, right? So the disciplining of a mind becomes the foundation of all the other virtues, all the other practices, right? So in that terms, if our mind is not disciplined, right, but we will not be able to develop wisdom, we will not be able to develop concentration, we will also not able to avoid the opposite of laziness and anger, right? And also will not be able to practice the generosity, right? So these are all interconnected. These are not supposed to be practiced exclusively, right? So this is one point, right? are you uh, are you guys able to follow me? I hope you're following me. Um,
Yes, ma'am. Keep going. Yes.
Okay, great, great. So the
Yes, yes.
perfection of generosity, right? Since the six perfections are states of mind, which we are supposed to, make our mind habituated with this perfection, right? These perfections. So after, eventually, after practicing all this six perfections, our mind will become perfected with the six perfections, and then it will attend the state of enlightenment, right? And the second thing, which I forgot to mention, is that the six perfections are actually are based on the generation, on the cultivation of the awakened mind, which is the bodhicitta, right? So the six perfections are basically the practices of a bodhisattva, right? So if one becomes if one starts practicing the six perfections, generating our mind towards enlightenment for the sake of all sentient being, right? Since the nature of bodhicitta is, it has two objectives, right? The foundation of bodhicitta has two main qualities, two essential characteristics, right? That is the aim to attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. These are there are two bases to there are two twin objectives of bodhisattva, and then generating our mind is to practice that bodhicitta, right? So the six perfections basically are the practice of a Mahayanist, right? A Mahayana practitioner actually, practices the six perfection on the basis of the generation of the mind of bodhicitta, right? So that's why the sixth perfection is also known as the vehicle of the the vehicle of the perfection. Chimbe bharod, parchin gi thekpa, right? So thekpa is the vehicle, right? So the parchin gi thekpa, right? The vehicle of the perfection, right? So since this is the foundation of the practice of Mahayana tradition. But the sixth perfection, the vehicle of the perfection, is also synonymously used in place of Mahayana itself, right? When we talk about Mahayana, right? Immediately we should we should the sixth perfection should come into our mind, right? On the practice of the sixth perfection on the basis of bodhicitta mind, it should come into our mind, right? So that's why the vehicle of the perfection, right? Bhajan ki thekpa, right? So it is very important, since the Mahayana tradition, it has two, I hope you know this, it has two. I also have mentioned in the last in the previous session also, the Mahayana is again classified in a tradition, in the Vajrayana tradition, and the perfect the vehicle of the perfection, Bhajan ki thekpa and Dorje thekpa, right? Tantra, the vehicle of the Tantra. Right. So the Mahayana, the vehicle of the perfection is, it becomes important. The practice in the Mahayana tradition. That's why, because of the foundation of the practices of Mahayana is the six perfections. That's why it is also known as it is synonymously used, as the Mahayana tradition itself also. That is one thing. And okay, and then coming to the point of the practice of the perfection of generosity, which we have discussed already. So it is a state of the mind of willingness, right? Or willingness to give, right? So the method or the way, right? The method or the way to practice the perfection of generosity is only by developing the will to give in many ways, right? So there are many ways to give, right? So there are mental ways, which is through through imagination, right? And through visualization, right? We can visualize, we can give, give through our visualization and through our imagination, right? Even we have nothing to give, right? So we can, that's why, the mandala, the practice of the mandala is one kind of, offering. Offering is a form of, again, giving, right? So also offering, and then we have do the dedication in the last, whenever we do something, whenever we do anything, we have to dedicate it, towards the sake of all sentient, you know we do the dedication in the last, while I think Louis and Macrina, you guys must have done, while during the rituals of, the chanting of the mantra, in a recent days, I think a few days back, you guys have sort of, organized in this chanting session, right? So in the last, you have to dedicate your merits to, towards the attainment of the Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, right? So that is again one form of, generosity, right? You are giving everything, every kind of merit that you have accumulated, you know, during the chanting session of the mantra, whatever you have, whatever merit, whatever good deeds you have done, you will generate it, you will, or dedicate it towards enlightenment and for the sake of all sentient beings. That is one form. And then, in many ways, but there are many ways in the sense, in the sense of in the sense of giving a solid object in the form of material object, right? You give money, you give food, right? You give clothes, right? And you give anything, right? Anything in material form, for others' benefit, right? That is one form of giving, right? And then you save someone, right? You motivate someone to do something good, so that is again one form of generosity, right? So, and then you sometimes, listen to someone very attentively, that is again one form of giving also, because you are giving your time to someone, right? So that is again one form of giving. You are giving your time, you are giving your energy, right? So again, when someone is completely discouraged, completely underconfident, and then you are giving confidence to that person. Oh, you should, oh, this because of this, oh, you can do this, why not, other person is, but other people are doing this, you have this quality, you have this things, why can't you do that? You are sort of spending your energy and your wisdom to develop confidence in that particular person, in that individual. It could be your friend or it could be anyone, right? So these are again forms of giving, again forms of practicing generosity. You are being generous in your time, you are being generous in your energy, you are being generous in your you know in your belongings, in giving to others, right? So, and then we have the other form of generosity is saving someone, right? To give shelter to someone, right? For example, the simplest way of giving shelter is when there is rain, right? When it is raining, and then you have you're holding an umbrella, right? And then you are saving yourself from the incessant rain, right? So you are getting you're saving yourself from getting wet, right? And then there is another individual, it could be a friend, it could be a stranger, right? So you are offering your umbrella, you're asking the other person to please come under my umbrella, you're getting wet, right? So that is one form of generosity, also one form of saving the person, right? So they are different in this way, I mean to say that there are different ways of giving, right? So to know all the forms of giving, we should really read, right? So please read the was a my perfect teacher, right? So you will find all kinds of profound examples in that, right? So developing the will to give in many ways, right? Shantideva says, one, passes into nirvana by dedicating all, Shantideva, but he writes in the Ways of the Bodhisattva, the Bodhicharya Avtara is a text composed by Shantideva, which is no, which is called Shchutjuk, Shchupalajukpa in Tibetan language, right? So in this text, he says, right, one passes into nirvana by dedicating all. The attainment of nirvana is, being attained by dedicating every kind of merits, every kind of good deeds, towards the sake of others. Right. One's mind achieves enlightenment at the same time, leaving all. We have to leave everything. Right. You have to leave everything for the sake of others. Just dedicate it. You just don't have to do anything. Just dedicate it with pure heart, right? So with a right kind of motivation, right? So it is best to dedicate to sentient beings. So willingness of giving must be practiced with meditating on the shortcomings of being miserliness, right? So this is what miserliness and greedy, right? So the practice of the willingness, which is the nature of generosity. Being generous is to become willingness to give, right? So it is to practice, and it is to meditate on the shortcomings of on the shortcomings of being miserliness and greedy, right? On the false shortcomings here means the false, right? Of being miserliness. What's wrong in being miserly? Miser, what's wrong with being miser? So what's wrong with being greedy, right? So and then dedicate all the matters to the sentient beings for their sake, right? So this is what Shantideva has written. So in terms of giving in, giving in many ways, I'm recollecting another thing, that we have discussed in the last session is the is dedicating, dedicating. If we see something beautiful, if we see a beautiful flower, if we see a very beautiful scene, a very beautiful landscape, there are many landscapes, beautiful landscapes in Ladakh, and then around the world, of course. So we just dedicate it, because we just wish it. Oh, how beautiful it is, just like a sunrise, just like a sunset, right? Um, and a very green lash area, which is full of different flowers, right? Colorful flowers and everything. um, so so there could be any beautiful or joyful object or scenes or any other thing, we could just wish. Or may all others also enjoy this beautiful scene, or this beautiful flower, or this beautiful object. That is again one form of dedication, right? One form of dedicating our joy, sharing our joy and pleasures with others, right? So that is one way of practicing generosity also, right? So coming to the next point, the classification of the perfection of generosity. We have three. There are three kinds of generosity, right? So the generosity of dharma, the generosity of fearlessness, and the material generosity, right? So in Tibetan language, the three kinds of generosities are known as the Zangzengi Chinba, Choski Chinba, Magic Paskapski Chinba, right? So the generosity of Dharma is Choski Chinba, the generosity of fearlessness is Magic Paskapski Chinba, and the generosity of material, or the material generosity, is Zangzeng Ichimba, right? Zangzeng is the mundane objects, right? The material objects. It comes in the form of money. It comes in the form of in any other material form, right? So Zangzeng Ichimba. Uh, so what is the generosity of Dharma, right? So what is the generosity of Dharma? This includes the generosity of Dharma, the practice of the generosity of Dharma. It actually includes, showing the Dharma, right? Purely giving ordination, Giving ordination is one form of the generosity of dharma. Teaching handicrafts such as religious paintings and mandalas constructions, right? So um, uh, so giving ordination, right, which is being given by any rinpoches or any head lama of a monastery, of sangha community, right, to a newly, you know new, or someone, an individual who tries to enter in the ordination, right, to become noise, a monk, in order to enter in the sangha community, the initial ordination. That is again one form of giving, dharma, one form of the generosity of dharma. Teaching handicrafts, handicrafts of, how to paint religious paintings and mandalas, which we find in the monasteries, right? The religious paintings we find, on the walls, the frescoes, fresco painting, we find flanked on the walls of the monasteries, especially in the Himalayan region. You will find lots of you know, fresco painting, right? So, for example, in Ladakh, the Alchi frescoes are really, very fantastic frescoes, which have been, painted, 1,000 years back, right? 100 years, no, 1,000 years back in 11th century or something, right? So that becomes 1,000 years, right? So religious paintings and mandala construction, there's a mandala construction, that happens in the monasteries, right? Especially during the monastic rituals, when there is any kind of monastic festivals or monastic rituals being held, in that particular monastery, we find the sand mandala and the colorful mandalas. Different. There are different kinds of mandalas, right? So the construction of the mandala is again very, uh, very, what does it say? It's not simple, it's very complex. You have to follow the particulars, very nitty-gritties, and then there should not be any mistakes while constructing and forming the mandala. So that is again, teaching how to construct, how to form a mandala, how to make a mandala, is again one form of uh, you know uh, the practice of the generosity of dharma. Teaching letters, even, teaching letters, right? We teach someone to how to write, how to read, right? That is again one form of the practice of the generosity of dharma. And saying mantras and prayers with the impulse of dharma generosity, right? Saying mantra, om mani padme hum, or om ahu vajra padma siddhi hum, right? Or we say, om om dhare tu rasua, especially all these mantras we find, we very prominent in the Himalayan regions, the chanting of these mantras, right? Om Muni Muni Mahamana, so which is the mantra of the Shakyamuni Buddha, right? So saying all this mantra to others, and with the prayers, right? And the prayers, we say the prayers, right? When someone dies, we say the prayers of the the Amitabha Buddha, right? So with the impulse of Dharma generosity, visualizing ourselves surrounded by all sentient beings who are listening to it, right? So these are different ways of, the generosity of dharma, right? So basically, generosity of dharma is, giving the teaching, right? Giving the teaching the dharma, or showing the path of dharma to others, right? So that is one way of, that is one way of generosity, which is in terms of the dharma, the highest form of, which is known as the highest form of, the practice of the generosity, the generosity of dharma, right? So the next one is the generosity of fearlessness, right? So it is about, saving someone from any kind of fear, right? Any kind of unsettled mind, any kind of insecurity, or it could be anything, right? Which someone fears from, right? Also saving someone from that, right? So this includes saving beings from dangers caused by humans, animals, or any other elements, right? Or there could be a flood, and someone goes quickly and then saves them, right? So when someone is walking just like that, and there is a danger, there is a sort of um, pitch on the way, but then we immediately inform, we informs that person, oh, please don't go in that side, please be mindful of the pitch on the path on the way, right? So that is again one form of uh, saving that individual from the danger of falling into the pitch, right? So there are different ways of saving someone from dangers, right? It could be mental, it could be you know um, it could be in any form, uh, 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 in the form of doing business, when there is something is when the market is in the risk, and then advise and suggest the other person not to invest in that particular share, because there's a risk of this is about to happen. You don't do this, so you save the other person from completely getting sort of so this is again one form of practicing generosity. And then when someone is chasing someone, for example, a very strong person is chasing a very weak person, and then if the strong person asks you, did this particular person pass by you? Where did he go? you know then you say, oh no, I didn't see him going but this way, right? And then you save that person, the weak person, right? So then that is again uh, sort of the practice of generosity or fearlessness, right? So there are different other forms, right? Saving someone or any beings, right, from dangers caused by humans, animals, or other elements, right? Other elements, it could be natural or it could be anything, right? So saving anyone from any kind of danger, right, and giving security, giving shelter, right? So that is one form of practicing generosity. And the third one is material generosity. You are being generous in sharing your possessions, right, in sharing your money, in sharing your property, in sharing in giving anything material to someone who is in need, right? So especially especially giving clothes, food, and other basic necessities, to someone who is in need, right? So it actually includes dedicating and giving all possessions and objects to others with a pure mind or attitude, or without tainted by any attachment or expectation, right? So 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 uh, giving this, without tainted, practicing this, you know practicing this way of giving, without tainted by any kind of attachment or any kind of expectation. Usually whenever we do, we do it, with lots of expectations, with many kinds of expectations in return, right? So we give money, to the needy ones, or to anything, in order to gain, in order to gain fame, in order to become bigger famous. Or this particular individual has given 1,000 rupees, 5,000 rupees, 10,000 rupees, 50,000 rupees, to this uh, you know to this poor man, right? To this poor fellow, right? So, what a big heart, you will become famous. So with that motivation, with that expectation, but if you give your material, that becomes, that doesn't become pure practice of giving, right? So it is important that our dedication, our giving, our willingness to give, our way of, our generosity should not be tainted by any kind of expectation or any kind of attachment or attachment. We have this attachment, right? So if we give 1,000 rupees to someone who was in need, and then later we regret it. Oh, why did I give it? Oh, I should have kept it. I could have done. I could have bought something else for myself. With 1,000 rupees, I could have bought a jacket, I could have bought a shoe, or I could have, bought something very nice for myself. We regret it later, right? So that is because of the attachment. Oh, that was my money. That 1,000 rupees was my money. And why did I give it to him or her, right? So that particular practice should not be tainted by those kinds of defilements, those kinds of strains, right? So that is one thing, right? So these are different forms of or different kinds of generosity: the generosity of dharma, the generosity of fearlessness, the material generosity, right? Zangsangi chinba, choski chinba, michispaskyapski chinba, right? So these are the three kinds of generosity in general way, right? So um, so the next one is not coming. What's wrong? Okay, okay. So, what should be done in the practice of generosity? What should be done? What should be practiced? While practicing generosity, right? So, we should abandon the following practice while practicing, the following while practicing generosity, right? So, what should we do? Well, we should abandon these things. All this the wrong views, the pride, right? So discouragement, partiality, self-interest, and all this, you know, state of mind, all this, ways of thinking, right? So what are the things that we should abandon? Basically, what should be done? There are things to be abandoned, and there are things to be practiced, right? So there are certain things which is to be practiced while practicing generosity, and then what are the things that we are supposed to abandon? Are the wrong views, right? We have the wrong views, that the erroneous concept that generosity is no result. Oh, if you give 1,000 rupees, what's the point? Your money is going to just, you're just wasting your money. Instead of that, you're giving it to the person, and then what is the relation between you and the stranger? Stranger is someone else. There's no result. There's nothing is going to come to you. You know. So that is the wrong view, right? So the erroneous concept of generosity is no result, right? So in terms of this, we are supposed to, think in terms of the benefits of generosity. What are the benefits? If we practice generosity, we are supposed to, you know, concentrate. We are supposed to think about the benefits of, being generous, right? So the wrong views is wrong view in terms of, generosity is supposed to be abundant. The second thing is pride. Pride is, and pride in terms of generosity is thinking that we are teaching the beggar, that we are competing with others, or that I am so generous, others cannot give as I do. That is a sort of, the ego, or that is the state of the ego. There being, oh, I am, much. I have a, larger heart. I'm much generous than any other person. Comparing yourself with someone else. If someone is giving, 100 rupees, oh, that person is giving 100 rupees, I can give more than that, because I have more, I have to show that, oh, I have to show that I have more money than that person, that is being pride, that is being, you know, um, that is your ego is playing in that terms, right? So you are being being in the wrong, way of thinking, right? So thinking that you are teaching the beggar, oh, that beggar, oh, just look, I'm better than that person, right? I am more generous than that person. I am more richer than that person. So that's why I have given you 200 rupees, I've given you 2,000 rupees, right? That is more than the other person, right? So that is That is a wrong way of thinking. And then dependence. Dependence in terms of the practice of generosity is the thought of dependence should be avoided. That is expecting to dependence on expectation, right? Expecting to receive something such as reputation as a result of having given the material, right? So depending on the particular expectation, our way of thinking is depending on something. Our way of practicing generosity is depending on the expectation of getting something in return, right? So such as reputation or fame or becoming famous or anything else, right? So that is again depending. Our way of thinking, our way of the practicing is not going in the right direction. We are supposed to avoid that. We are supposed to abandon that, right? And then discouragement, right? Discouragement in terms of the practice of the generosity is, we should not be discouraged by the difficulties, by the difficult extensive generosity of the bodhisattva. A bodhisattva even is ready to give his body, right? So he a bodhisattva even gives his part of his body in generosity, right? So a bodhisattva practice that far, right? How can I give my own life, right, in giving, in generosity to someone else? I cannot do that. So I cannot practice the sixth perfection, because the sixth perfection is the practice of a bodhisattva. I cannot become, I cannot go that far, right? So you become completely discouraged, by comparing yourself with the kind of deeds that a bodhisattva do, right? Bodhisattva does, right? So you become, discouraged. You discourage yourselves, right? So you are not supposed to discourage yourselves, right? You are not supposed to get discouraged, right? By seeing the difficulties and the extensive ways of, practicing the generosity by a bodhisattva, right? Before practicing generosity, the mind should be happy, right? Our mind should be happy, right? If our mind are happy, if our mind is happy, then obviously, you will uh, follow up on the path. Oh, okay, this is this, I'm supposed to practice this, right? So while being generous, it should be calm. Our mind has to be calm, and afterwards we should not get regretted having been generous, right? So for example, just I've given the example, oh, you have given the money in the 1,000 rupees to someone else, right, to the other person, and then later we regret it. That is because our mind is not calm, right? Our mind has become come under the control of, control of, attachment. Oh, that was my money. I could have bought something else for myself, you know. And that is because our mind is not settled. Our mind is not happy while giving. You didn't give that money with a happy state of mind. You're not happy with your giving, right? And then the regret should not be followed after being generous, right? So that is becoming discouraged. Oh, if I give the money to, oh, what will I do? I could have bought a shoe for myself, right? That is being discouraged, right? And then partiality, right? In terms of partiality, while practicing the generosity, we should not have the partial thought. There's the discrimination. Oh, that person is good. That person looks good. I should, okay, I'll give it to him. In terms of, when we see something, oh, okay, you try to, relate. You try to sort of, so this is, the partial thought. But practice generosity with impartial compassion for both enemy and stranger, right? Partiality in terms of uh, basically enemy and stranger, right? And friends also, right? So we become this become discriminative. We become partial in terms of our friend, in terms of the person that we love, in terms of the person that is our enemy, in terms of a person who is nothing to us, just a stranger, right? So, oh, someone is getting, if he's in need. Oh, I don't know. I'm not supposed to do anything to the person because he or she is not related to me. I don't know him. How am I supposed to go and help? I don't know. We also hesitate, when someone is, when there is an accident on the road, these days, people tend to just pass by and don't care, right? Because they say, oh, I don't know the person, I could get, trapped in the legality, legally I could get trapped, right? So there's a hesitation, there's this fear, right? Because of those state of mind, but we do not go and help the person or help the particular individual who has got, caught up in an accident, right? So we can become partial at that particular time, or when there is someone who is known, who has met with an accident, then, oh, that is my friend, that is my relative, that is someone, my uncle, my aunt, and my uh, we trump so many things. Oh, I should go and help. Oh, how did this thing happen? Oh, so this is the partiality of our mind, right? In terms of practicing partiality, in the sense of giving, especially in terms of the practice of, the uh, uh, fearlessness, giving, this, which is the second generosity of the fearlessness, So self-interest. We have this self-interest thing, just like or the expectation, right? We expect something to gain in return when we give something to someone else, right? So without the slightest thought of reward for ourselves, we should think that the object of our generosity is completely devoid of happiness and has no ability to remove suffering. Without thought of reward means that we must not think only of the results of generosity, such as receiving the perfect human rewards or perfect possessions in future lifetime, but that we should remember that possessions are trivial and think of the benefits of enlightenment which are received by practicing generosity, right? Self-interest, in the sense, when especially the benefits of generosity is that, it says that, practice the generosity, you become rich in the next birth, right? So with that expectation, oh, if you practice generosity, then you will become rich in the next life. So that's why you practice generosity. That is again wrong, right? So and receiving the perfect human reward, or perfect possessions in the future lifetime, right? So one should practice it with the right kind of motivation of attaining enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, right? So usually in terms of self-interest, selfishness, Dalai Lama usually uses the word, if you're being selfish, be wise in being selfish, you know wisely, be wisely selfish. And there's a wiseness, you should be wise while becoming selfish, right? Be wisely selfish. Wisely selfish in the sense, you're being selfish to attain buddhahood, and you're being selfish to attain buddhahood, right? You're attending the state of enlightenment, and then you're wisely selfish in the sense, you are doing your own goods. At the same time, you are doing goods for others also. That is being wise in being selfish. That's what, um, uh, with a sense of humor, the Lama usually says this, right? So the self-interest, we're supposed to abandon that attitude. The fear, right? At the time of practicing generosity, we should not feel afraid of becoming poor in the future. Oh, if I give this money to other, what will I do in the future? I'll, my all my monies, all my properties, all my objects, all my possessions will get exhausted, and what will remain? For what will leave left for myself, there will be nothing for myself to eat, to wear. How will I eat? What will I wear? How will I buy stuffs for myself? How will I buy food for myself, right? If I give all the money that I have to others, right? So uh, so nor have a treacherous thought of betraying the object of generosity, right? So this is one thing, the fearing, the state of fear, right? The fear is again a mental state, right? So we are supposed to abandon that also, the hesitant mind, right? So, and then maliciousness. If we perceive that the object of our generosity has certain faults, we should not have the malicious thought, right? So maliciousness, in the sense, we are being malicious while giving some object to someone else, right? This is of no use to myself, you know. This thing, something, when um, there is a food lying in our fridge for days, and then it is smelling bad. Oh, it's smelling. I cannot eat this. Just give it to someone else, right? So that's being malicious. That's not the right way of practicing generosity, right? So all these things are supposed to be abundant, or while practicing generosity, right? So, and the next thing is, what should be practiced while practicing generosity, right? These are the things, I've mentioned certain things which we are supposed to practice, bring into practice while practicing generosity, right? So there's a generosity should be practiced without harming others, right? If we rob something from someone, if we steal something from someone, if we take something from someone, lying, right? If we lie someone, oh, I need this, really need this, right? Even if we don't need it, if we take it, if we rob it from someone, and then with bad thoughts and bad motivation, try to give it to someone else, right? So harming without harming anyone, right? It is very important, right? So it's just Angus, I guess. Okay. So generosity should be practiced without harming others, right? And then the second thing is by bearing difficulties and troubles as they arise, right? Uh, we should have the thing in our mind to bear all the difficulties, while all the troubles, or while practicing the generosity, right? And the next thing is by our own hand, with respect for the object, right? So we are supposed to uh, whenever we are supposed to give anything, whenever we practice the generosity, we are supposed to give it with our own hand, just not throwing it. If we are giving a food to a dog, even a morsel of food, even a portion of a food, if we give it to a dog, and we just throw it, but so that is not the right way of giving, right? So we respectfully give the food to the dog also, right? So without throwing it, we just should, give it to the dog, right? So and giving it with our own hand, uh, you know with respect. And there are certain people who do not, okay, that poor man looks very bad, I don't want to go in front of that, I don't like it, but just go and give it to him, you know I don't like it, but just go and give it to him, right? That's again not the right way of giving, right? So by our own hand, with respect for the object, right? With sincere words, right? We have to be sincere in our words also. Oh, without any respect, we should be respectful, right? So with a pleased mind and smiling face, not with a boggy face, not with a long face, not with a sad face, right? So we should be happy, we should be joyous, we should be smiling while practicing generosity, while giving anything to anyone. Oh, please have it. And the other person will also be pleased, also become happy and joyful, you know, in taking the object that we are giving, right? So if we are angry, if we haven't have an angry, face, then the other person will also become hesitant in taking the object from us also, right? So these are a few things that I have drawn, that I have written here, but that is supposed to be practiced while giving, while practicing generosity, right? So okay. So now, practice of each of the six perfections should contain all the other six, so when we practice, one thing that we need to keep it in our mind is that, or when we practice the six perfections, each practice of the six perfection constitutes the practice of other perfections also, right? So the other perfections comes simultaneously, when we become perfected in, even if in one one paramita or one perfection, right? So so that means, for example, the perfection of generosity, if we become perfected in the perfection of generosity, we will become also perfected in other uh, you know the other six perfections also, right? So that is one thing that we should keep it in our mind, that the practice of one perfection, each you know perfection of the six paramitas constitutes or contains the practice of other perfections, right? So in terms of the generosity, in terms of the perfection of generosity, if we see, uh, then uh, if we see in the ethics of the generosity, right, we have already have seen the meaning of the generosity, the methods of practicing generosity, the classification, the kinds of generosity, and what should be done while practicing generosity. And if we see the ethics of the generosity, how generosity constitutes the perfection of ethics also, right? If we see in that then, when we practice generosity with a bodhicitta motivation, we should avoid all the known virtues of our body, speech, and mind. For if we do not, right, we break the process of ethics, right, which will cause us to suffer in the lower realms, right. For in terms of practicing generosity, also, we are practicing ethics also, that the perfection of ethics also, right. For example, for example, just if we take an example, while giving, we should not steal something, to give someone else. That becomes the wrong way of practicing generosity, right? That is, here again we are, violating the ethical codes, the moral codes, the moral rules, the ethical laws. We are violating that, right? So in terms of practicing generosity, we also should practice the perfection of ethics also, right? So we should be virtuous to our body, speech, and mind also, right? So without breaking the precepts of ethics, right? uh, and then if we take something from someone else by lying, that is again breaking the precept of lying, right? And breaking the precepts of not to lie, not to steal, and all these things, right? So so that's how the practice of generosity encompasses the practice of ethics also. And the practice of the passions of generosity is, we must also have passions and not get angry with those who react badly to our generosity by speaking harshly or by showing displeasure. We should be passionate, when we give 100 rupees to someone. If the other person do not get pleased with, oh, you just have given 100 rupees to me, I don't need it, just take it. He or she just throws it, and then we become very angry. Oh, I have given 100 rupees to you, and then 100 rupees is something, very much, you know it's not a less of a money, and then we become very angry. Oh, but you're not pleased, you're disrespectful towards me, right? I've given it to you, I've helped you, but you are being rude to me, right? So in that term we become very you know un, un we become angry and impassioned, right? In terms of that, we should be passionate, we should practice passion in terms of giving generosity, right? So that's how the passion of generosity uh, is encompassed in this practice. Without passion, there is the danger of anger destroying the merit. If we become angry, right? Then it actually be, it is, the anger is just like a fire, that engulfs the entire building, that engulfs everything, right? So it destroys all the matters, if you become anger, right? So we are supposed to be very mindful while practicing general the paramitas, we should not, the anger is very bad, right? It's a really very bad element, right? So the next thing is the enthusiastic perseverance, or the enthusiastic effort of generosity is, generosity must be met with continual strong energy. Otherwise, we are in danger of becoming lazy, thinking that we can practice generosity at some later time, right? So we should be very, you know, um, ego, we should be very, enthusiastic, joyfully, joyful enthusiastic effort, the perseverance, is very important, without, becoming lethargic, without becoming lazy, you know without, postponing, or whatever we are supposed to do, or I'm supposed to, chant the mantra, or I'll do it later, right? Or I'm supposed to give it to that poor man, oh, I'll give it later. But maybe he or she has left, lived that way, he will live that way for some other, for a few more days. I can give it later. That is being, postponing your practice of generosity, right? So one should, generosity must be met with continual, there is a continuity way of, there's a strong energy, the joyful energy being, you know, um, vigorous, joyful, vigorous, very eager to, to work for others, right? That is very important. Um, and the next one, the concentration of generosity, right? The concentration of generosity is, there's there is need of concentration, thinking one pointedly of the benefits of other beings, of others being generous, and the shortcomings of not being generous. We should be generous, and we should be concentrated, mindful, in terms of the qualities, in terms of the characters, of generosity, and the faults or the shortcomings of not being generous. If the one pointed concentration that prevents us from falling under the control of delusion is met, and then our virtuous possessions are in jeopardy of being stolen by the thief, that is distraction, right? So we are supposed to be very, focused. We are supposed to be very mindful. We are supposed to be very concentrated, while practicing the generosity, right? So, for example, if we are being distracted by regrets, or we are being, or we are our mind, comes under the control of attachment, then whatever we do, that will go in waste, right? So we should be very mindful. We should be very concentrated, right? So the wisdom of generosity. Well, finally, at the time of practicing generosity, it is very necessary for the disseminating wisdom, right? The disseminating awareness, the alertness of our mind, where the sharpness of our mind, to check what should be practiced and what should be abandoned, what should be done and what should be avoided while practicing generosity, lest the practice be met incorrectly, right, or with corrupt action, right? For example, if we do something, if we give, if we become being generous in giving to someone else in order to become famous, right, to grow our, reputation among our friends, right, among other people, that is the wrong way. Our actions of giving has become corrupted with the delusions of our mind, right? So, attachment and expectation, as we have discussed earlier, right? But especially generosity should be met with the wisdom, concentrating on the circle of the three: subject, object, and action of and emptiness, right? These three spheres is very important. While practicing generosity, we are supposed to, we are supposed to um, become aware of the real nature of the three sphere, that is subject, object, and the way we are giving, right? The empty state of and the emptiness, the concept of emptiness. The three sphere, in the sense, whatever we are giving, whatever what the way we are giving, the object of the giving, to whosoever we are giving it, all these three should be, our mind should be divided of, holding the concept of, inherent existence of a particular independent, entity. This is again the, understanding of the reality of the three sphere, that's the subject, object, and to, you know uh, the practice again, right? So these three um, should be developed, should be practiced on the basis of the wisdom of the emptiness, right? So it is very important, the understanding of this three spheres becomes very really important in practicing generosity, right? So without the practice, without otherwise the practice will not become a pure bodhisattva's way of practicing generosity, right? So the bodhisattva's mind has to be based on the understanding of the reality of the nature of the reality, which is emptiness, right? So so it has to be based on that, otherwise it doesn't becomes a real, pure way of practicing, the bodhisattva's way of uh, you know practicing, right? So it is very important, while practicing generosity accompanied with wisdom, right? So uh, uh, so uh, so uh, accompanied with wisdom, I've, you know done. Okay, there's a typo. Okay, so while practicing generosity, it has to be accompanied with the, with the wisdom of understanding the reality of phenomena, all phenomena, right? That is the action, the the way of giving, that should not be diluted with the defilement of attachment, the object, and and here the object means the thing, the material thing, or whatever, the thing that is supposed to be given, right? And the object whomsoever we are giving, right? All those three things should be, the individual mind who is practicing, you know should understand the basic nature of all those things, right? That is in the empty nature of the condition of all these things, right? So wisdom is very important in order to, sort of becoming out the pure way of generosity, right? So generosity is one form of practice of the bodhisattva, and it is a state of mind, which is willingness, like I said before, right? So which is a willingness in nature to give away whatever one has to others, right? As Shantideva says in Bodhisattva's Way of Life, that the perfection of giving is said to be through the mind, that giving that would give away to anyone all that is mine, right? It's a willingness of the mind, it's a habit of, it's a habit, that we have to make our mind habituated, right? So it's a state of mind, right? So it's a state of mind of of the willingness to give away whatever we have, right? So together with its result, yeah, but the in terms of the merits that we have accumulated by doing whatever the good deeds that we have done, the result, you know the results that we should just dedicate to others, you know so thus it is the mind itself, the practice of giving, the practice of generosity is the mind itself. We should train our mind but in terms of becoming a willingness, you know becoming unreluctant, unhesitant in giving, right? So it's the practice of the mind, it's the state of the mind. He further writes in the same text that if the perfection of giving were that the poverty, if the perfection of giving were that the poverty of wandering beings was all gone, right? If the perfection of giving was not a state of mind, then the wandering beings who are who are poor, but that we see that that there are people who are still are still in the state of poverty, right? Then uh, how could the guardians of all old have perfected it? Means how could the guardians, the bodhisattvas, the enlightened beings have perfected the way of giving? If it is not a state of mind, since it is a state of mind, they have perfected it, right? So generosity of giving means doesn't mean making other people you know provided with all kinds of you know all kinds of possessions, right? We cannot do that. We cannot do that. But what can we do is we can make our mind perfected in the willingness to give, right? So that's why the previous buddhas, the bodhisattvas, they have perfected the way of the of generosity, right? So but whenever someone asks, without any hesitation, if we have practiced the generosity without any hesitation, we just give it without any kind of um, uh, obstacle, right? Without getting our minds dented by any kinds of defilements of attachment or expectation or any other form of any other state of our mind, right? So our mind spontaneously, very immediately, it becomes very sort of very ready to give anything without thinking a second thing, you know so without giving a second thought, we just give it, right? That is again because of practicing the generosity again and again and again, right? So since wandering beings have hunger still now, we see we see in the world, there are still hunger, you know so if perfection of giving is to make them less hunger, we cannot make everyone rich. We cannot give everyone food, right? But we can become more generous. We can generate, cultivate, develop our mind towards the willingness to give, right? So that is um, the meaning of the perfection of generosity, right? So next one is the perfection of ethical discipline, but I think it's seven, so I think we are supposed to stop here. So we'll stop here and then we will continue tomorrow. Okay. Uh,
Okay, ma'am. Fine.
okay, sure. If we have any question, then we can take it later also. So we can take it on the group of the WhatsApp also, right? So we will end
Okay.
the session here, and then we'll see you tomorrow. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Sure.
Okay, thank
Thank you.
you. Okay,
Thank
bye
you.
bye. Bye.